Royal Academy Book Club Peak Chapter 8.
Yeah, you probably want to work on that intro a little bit more.
I should just like copy Day 9's intros. Like Day 9's intros are always fantastic. Like you like go back, you watch like his intro for what was that game? The Last Express, right? And he's like doing like the second go round of it, and he just opens up the stream and it's just him, ginormous in the middle of the screen. He's like, "Oh!" And then everyone else starts like looking at him. He's like, "Yeah!" And then everyone's like, "Okay, he's done." And he's like, "Dude!" It's just keep going until people laugh. It's like how you do it. So
no, it has to be here. I'm gonna show us. So this is only because it says like wouldn't fit at all, and I love it.
Nice.
PBS Nova intro, dude. It has to be that.
Dang, agreed. I gotta get somebody on that. Anyway, so this is Chapter 8. But what about natural talent, aka Layla? I wish you were here. So they open up the chapter talking about prodigies, right? To quote the text, "Fine, some people will say. We understand all of that. But even so, aren't there some people who don't have to work as hard and can still be better than everyone else? And aren't there some people who are born without any talent for something, say music or math or sports, so that no matter how hard they try, they'll never be any good at it?" Right? So he begins the chapter talking about several of the first variety, those that seem to be able to kind of get there without doing that much work, and we're all just like, wow, I'll never be that talented, right? Mm-hmm. Take, for instance, Paganini. World-class violin composer and player, and he was like a path breaker, right? Like, he enjoyed developing new techniques. He was a showman. He really liked to impress his audience. And legend says that during a performance, his violin strings started to snap one by one. But he was able to finish the piece on just one string and sound no worse for it. And everyone was like, "This guy, this guy, what even? How can? It's impossible." Right? It's kind of like the first time that somebody did like Korean lane swap meta in like on live TV, and everyone was like, "Do they know that putting two people top is wrong? That no one does that? Are they aware of that?" And then they immediately like crushed the game, and everyone was like, so, you know, it's you know, on a regular-ish sort of basis, you'll have people who kind of develop new stuff and they start showing it, and everyone's like, "Oh my goodness gracious," right? So people cite this particular thing as being like, in order to, on the fly, dynamically figure out how to play the piece on the remaining couple of strings as they continue to snap, and then finishing the piece on one string. Nuts. There's no way that anybody without a gift of some kind would be able to do that, right? So, what you find out, however, is that he was the sort of person that really kind of liked to impress his audience, right? And a couple of years earlier, he had developed a two-string composition, one on the with a piece for the high string and a piece for the low string, to represent two lovers in a dialogue. Then he was requested to write a composition on only one string for a particularly sensitive listener, some princess of some such, right? Somebody, right?
Some chick, dude.
And then and so, you know, there's reason to believe that he probably, having done both of these things, was like, well, that's kind of a neat shtick. And so he another piece that's kind of important is that violin strings back in that day were a lot more fragile than the ones that we have now, and so if you intentionally pressed on them, you could probably break them on purpose, right? So, you know, what it all leads up to is probably staged everything, right? Probably composed and practiced the piece with breakages in mind
Yeah.
to make it look cooler, and then he did it in front of a whole bunch of people, and everyone was like, "You big brain genius!" And he's like, "Yes, I am big brain genius, but not as big brain genius as he would like everyone else to believe."
Yeah.
Not anymore, anyway.
Yeah.
Nowadays you see 7-year-olds playing the pieces that he wrote, so it's like, you know, you can kind of see how much higher that the threshold is now.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Right. So, one of the reasons that people believe in the power of innate talent is the apparent existence of natural prodigies. People who, like Paganini, seem to display skills unlike anyone else's, or who exhibit expertise with little or no training. The author says, "I have made it a hobby to investigate the stories of such prodigies, and I can report with confidence that I have never found a convincing case for anyone developing extraordinary abilities without intense, extended practice." People also point to, like, Mozart, right? Prodigious playing and compositional skills at very, very young ages, right? But when you dig a little bit deeper into it, a lot of it is kind of staged by his dad, right?
Forced.
Yeah, his dad actually edited his music. He spent 8 hours a day on the violin. By the time he was 6, he had like 4,000 hours of practice. You're gonna be good, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly, right. You know, and when you compare it to what you see out of modern violin and quote-unquote prodigies of, you know, I mean, we have 6 and 7-year-olds doing roughly the same stuff that Mozart was doing at that time. It was just that he was the first, and so it looked absolutely nuts, right? All of his compositions, you know, the very early stuff is in his dad's handwriting, and, you know, "Oh, I'm just cleaning it up." Yeah, okay, buddy, sure. So, the very earliest stuff is probably his dad's pieces in disguise. The later stuff appears to be mostly derivative of other works and not actually.
Yeah, him
actually his
learning
own
how to really
compositions.
compose. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, he's like figuring it out. Clearly, you know, it really
Yeah, a
is
lot of
like
people in
his
that day,
stuff.
the deliberate practice was about not, you know, taking the piece and analyzing it chord for chord. I mean, they did that, but it's also like writing a piece that's very similar to it, using maybe different melodies, but like this, you know, same chord progression and type of like textures and stuff. But
Sure.
and then yeah,
And so, you know, basically, what you find is that by the time we can actually confirm that they are his pieces, he's already spent like 10 years composing and practicing
he's
composing,
spent
right?
thousands upon thousands of hours
And
composing.
so, you know, it's like, well, there you go, right? You know, it's not that he was doing it from a super young age. That stuff didn't actually happen. It was it was only later on that stuff started getting good. But it did get really good, right? It's, you know, it's not to
there's another
diminish his memory
theory
or anything.
that just popped up in the last like 5 years or so. They had actually uncovered some letters that showed that Constanzi, his wife, burnt most of his music after he died in an effort to, I guess, keep it private or something. I don't know. It was like at his wish. But it turns out that, you know how a lot of scholars, when they got Mozart letter, they were like, oh, this passage here, he says that he has already had the Giovanni overture composed. He just has to write it down. And he procrastinates till the night before and then writes it down and all this. And he like, that is evidence that he wrote it all in his head before he wrote it down. And so it's like, people, you know, took that to be like, oh my God, this guy's a genius. But if you look into the fact that his wife burnt sketches and they started finding sketches, it turns out that Mozart actually had very similar compositional sort of habits that most composers do. He's much more similar to the Beethoven, where he can, you know, writes all his ideas down and then just like cuts them out, adds new stuff, you know, kind of changes them on paper. So it's not like he was writing things in his head. He actually had written things like most composers do. It's just that he wrote sketches and then drafts and then final pieces. And what he meant was that he had the whole draft done, he just hadn't fully orchestrated it yet, is what the new scholars are thinking. So it's like they're starting to think that Mozart maybe wasn't as much of a genius as everybody thinks he is still. Of course, that theory gets a lot of pushback because people like the idea of Mozart being some.
Of course,
it makes it easier to be bad when you say, "Oh no, he just had something other than something that I didn't."
Right. Yeah. Or like people just like the idea of sort of like I know a lot of religious people, for example, are like, his music comes from God directly or something. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Whatever
But, like,
excuses the people can find to not work. That's how it
yeah,
works.
for sure. And so I thought that was really interesting and kind of really pointed to, I think, Ericsson's sort of argument even further, is that like, hey, I mean, he composed just like the rest of us, dude. He just happened to spend all his time composing when he was, not like he can go play League of Legends. He
started really young, and then he kept doing it, and then he kept doing it, and then he kept doing it, and there he was. Look at that. Yeah. So, and then he gives a couple of other examples of very similar sorts of things, like a hockey player that you do a little research and you find out that, like, the family literally, like, put ice rinks inside of the house so that the kids could continue to skate after it got dark. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this family is nuts.
Then,
okay.
Was this the book that mentioned Tiger Woods?
It mentioned Tiger Woods in a couple other chapters, but
yeah. So Tiger, another book. I think it might have been The Talent Code that mentioned it, where it's like, it turns out that Tiger Woods, everyone thought he was a prodigy because nobody talked about his early life really. But it turned out that his dad wrote a memoir, or somebody wrote a memoir, a long time past. And he was like, no, when Tiger Woods was 2, that's when he first started playing golf. I wanted him to be good. And it turns out his dad was a really good golf teacher. So from the time he was 2, he just like golfed with his dad. He watched his dad like swung clubs, and by the time he was 6 or 7, it's kind of like Mozart, where it's like he just had so much practice that he's going to be better than everybody else around him.
He started early.
Another example, but it's actually a personal experience, is my father works in computer science. He's a lead project manager in a programming, industrial coding company. Sorry, I can't find my words somehow. And so when I was like 7, he made me build my first computer, like helped me build my first computer and wrote my first programs, And so when we started like having to use computers, then I was like,
too easy.
Really much. Yeah, I was. People are like, "Well, you're so talented at this," and like, no, I'm just like I literally have been building computers, and
at that point you'd be like, "Yeah, you're goddamn right, I'm talented. Go fuck yourself."
I was doing this before you were born.
No, because people just say, I don't understand computers. And I'm like, I will never understand computers. And I'm like, you fucking idiot, I will slap you.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you're probably like, yeah, you're probably right. I mean, you've already said it yourself. I'm not arguing that.
Yeah, fuck arguing. Yeah. I'm too old for that shit.
But I mean, I heard that all the time myself. How I'd spend, 45 minutes playing a recital, and they'd be like, "Oh my god, you're so talented! I wish I was that good with my hands." And I'm like, "You didn't see the 500 hours I spent practicing."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and I'd imagine that if you spent 500 hours practicing, you'd be able to. Well, okay, it wouldn't be 500, but because all the other skills I'd built up. But like, you spend 500 hours doing something, you're gonna get pretty damn good at it, regardless of. Yeah. But the other thing, I don't know if Peak mentions it, but like, there was kind of a thread I was seeing too, that like when you think about Viper and his little brother who recently got Challenger, or like Mozart and his dad, or Tiger Woods and his dad, it's like all the prodigies have like really like a teacher really close to them, either like a family friend or like their parent or whatever. And so it's like those guys kind of get a head start because they already have someone who knows how to teach them from the age of 2 or 3 or 10 or whatever.
Exactly. And there's another thing that's kind of related is like, do you know the concept of video game literacy?
Yeah, for sure.
Literally just being able to.
I've not.
You playing video games makes you better at playing old video games, basically, because there's a language, like a common language, that makes sense for gamers. That it doesn't.
That makes sense.
And like people that like have never, like if you've ever tried to like play video games with someone that has never played, and like you just introduce them to a game that you're familiar with, let's say something like whatever, a first-person shooter. Like first-person shooters are the prime example of games that have so much shit that's like a culture. Like everything makes sense for a gamer, but
like
nothing.
Fighting games,
yeah, exactly, like fighting games. But if you like some people say, I'm just never going to be good with video games, and you look at people that are good with video games, and they fucking started like when they were 6, and they were just
That's me, dude.
same,
Hmm.
basically same, and it's a similar concept. Like people only see the end result and assume that that's where people started.
Right, exactly.
People have no fucking clue how improvement works. Like basically that's basically what it is.
Definitely, or like, I mean, like you said earlier, it's sort of like a way of sort of protecting their own
avoid-
ego.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I'm just like, it's just not my thing.
Yeah, it's like exactly.
There's
It's
no
like
point.
I'll never get good at it. Means they don't have to feel bad about themselves for being bad at it.
Well, I mean, being bad at something doesn't mean you have to feel bad about it
No,
either.
right, I know that.
But yeah. But yeah, I agree. That's
To
basically what I mean.
to
I mean, you're completely
move on
right.
to the point that you've basically begun to discuss about anti-prodigies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the author makes a pretty good argument, that's basically like generally what you'll find is that an authority figure of some sort tells these people at a kind of a young age that they really suck at something, and that kills any kind of motivation to practice. It kills any kind of belief that they can accomplish something, and as a result, they don't practice, and as a result of not practicing, they don't improve. Self-fulfilling prophecy, and they don't actually get any better.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that that people don't have talent for something. It's that they, it could be any number of things. But one of the most common is you've convinced yourself you can't even do it, and so you self-sabotage. So you self-sabotage, and you don't even try, right?
And since you
I
see
feel so
yourself
personally
like
attacked right now.
And then
personal prophecy realizes, so you're like, well, I was right. There's no like, and
Yeah.
you don't have any impetus for like moving forward and doing something different.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, sometimes people try to practice, but they're not using a method that's working for them. And then when they don't use a method that's working for them, they come to the conclusion that it's them. It must be them.
Yeah,
that they have no talent. It's not that the method is wrong. And so then they give up. So.
Like, for instance, a good example is people trying to learn a new language, right? And using shit like this small fucking apps like Duolingo or something like that.
Sure.
That don't actually make you you don't practice talking. Like, you just like fill out some vocabulary.
Yeah, it's more like translation practice than it is speaking practice, really.
Exactly. And so when they try speaking, and they're like, "Well, I'm still as bad, and I've been practicing for a while."
Yeah, I've practiced 1,000 hours of Duolingo, dude. Like, I'm sad. I'm bad at learning languages. Like,
Yeah.
I bet you anything that you literally take yourself to France and literally stop speaking English for 3 months, you're gonna start learning some goddamn French.
Well, I've been living in Slovakia for 3 days now, and I can speak. I can make myself. People understand myself when I speak in Slovak, and I haven't taken a single class. I've just literally talked to other students from Slovakia, and I bought a small a handbook of like pre-made sentences.
Yeah, kind of like you have
topics.
You have to know
and so before going to a restaurant, I just like check what I want to say and what the most common answers are going to be, and then I say that. And then I don't understand what they say, and so I also learned how to say, "Please repeat slower. I'm learning Slovak." And
hell yeah, dude.
now I'm like, all the Slovak people are like they. Well, already 3 times it happened. They think that I'm Slovak when they first meet me. So I'm
nice.
ultra learning, by the way.
I am reminded of when I was in middle school. I was taking French classes for a little bit, and
oh no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and yeah, it was really good. And the husband of the French teacher came in, and we all thought he was the coolest thing, right? And he knew exactly one sentence in French, and that is, "I don't speak French. Talk to my wife."
Nice.
What an absolute.
What a power play.
Absolutely brilliant, right? That's why, wow, there you go. Right? That's it, right? There it goes. You've unlocked the entire language. Brilliant. It's like
that speaks the language.
Marry somebody that speaks a language. How do you get healthcare? Marry somebody with healthcare. There you go. It's that easy.
5 head.
So what if you need somebody who has healthcare and a wife that speaks another language, but you can only have one at a
move
time?
To France.
Move to France? Okay, fair enough.
Everybody gets healthcare.
Damn. Yeah.
Flexing.
A damn socialist, dude. Damn socialist.
Basically socialist, yes. Go tell everybody that Emmanuel Macron is.
Yeah, I know, seriously.
Yeah, so I think that there is maybe more to say here. I gotta say, actually, I don't feel like the authors make a super strong argument about anti-prodigies. Like the basically the way that I see what they're doing is like, you know, okay, so like if you don't try, then guaranteed we have no idea whether you could have learned it or not, right? But practically, right, you're kind of trying to prove a non-existence, right? And that's like inherently a difficult thing to do. You're trying to prove that you can't learn something, right?
Well, I think that the reason they bring up anti-prodigies is because as a way to shut down counter arguments, probably to the other arguments that are like, hey, well, what about these people who say they practiced for several hours and didn't get good? Well, it turns out that there's these people that we term as anti-prodigies who maybe don't try as hard, or they give up because they're told that they can't, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think they're trying to make the case that it's like there are people who can't learn. I think it's just sort of like a way to shut down counter argument for the previous.
Yeah,
that's definitely what it is.
It's kind of how that came off to me.
Yeah, and kind of what I guess maybe I didn't phrase my point properly. I think that they do a poor job of constructing a strong argument that anti-prodigies don't exist. I think that I agree that they give really good advice to people, right? And I definitely believe in what they're saying, right? But I don't think that what they have down on paper would necessarily convince somebody who really did strongly believe in anti-prodigies, right?
Yeah,
I don't think that
there's the issue that the only way for people to believe what they say is to actually experience it. I'm pretty sure.
So,
like that, it's the kind of thing you like. If you have the belief that you're an anti-prodigy, someone has to teach you something that you thought you were bad at, and you'll be like, oh, okay, I guess I just can learn.
Yeah,
well,
but even
that, like, I thought that. And I'm not sure if I'm really attacking your point here. Maybe I don't understand it properly, but sort of the way I thought he was saying was like, he's not saying that there are people who can't learn, but like people who tell themselves that they can't learn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the
and I'm
point
saying
as well.
There could be people. I'm saying that like he's making the proposition that there do not exist people who can't learn, right?
And that's the argument you're not buying.
I don't buy that. It's not that I don't buy it. It's not that I don't buy it. I personally do buy it. But the reason that I buy it is not the arguments that he makes. The reason that I buy it is general personal experience and like my malaise in the universe. You know what I mean? Like it's the I've come to that conclusion on my own. I think that the arguments that he presents in favor of there do not exist people who can't learn are open-ended, right? Like I could say something to I guess what I'm trying to say is it's an inherently difficult thing to prove that there don't exist people who can't learn, right? Like that is really difficult to prove,
right? Because it's sort of like
and even what he says, right?
Argument, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, where it's like, if we observe 5 billion people who can learn something, but 0 people who can't learn it, then you still can't say that there's nobody who can't learn it, right? Because
you can't prove
one person who comes up and shows you that they can't learn it completely invalidates your argument.
Yeah, and even then, right? The thing that you'll run into is there will always be people who struggle a lot to learn stuff, right? And when those people surface and when they have these troubles, right? You can never be certain whether it's an issue of that they aren't doing the right methods or whether it's an issue of they really can't learn, right? If the methods that everyone else uses don't work for them, right? What does that mean, right? Does it mean that there does exist another method out there that will help them? But like, what if the what if the time that it takes them to develop a method that works for them is longer than the time that they live, right? Would we still be able to say that they're a person who could have learned but didn't, you know? Like, practically, I feel like there's maybe a counter-argument to be made there. But certainly I think, in the end, the argument is kind of esoteric, right? It's like, whether there do or don't exist people who have trouble learning, right? It doesn't actually matter, because if you want to do something, right, and you have a strong conviction that this is something that you want to get good at, right? The way that you're going to give yourself the best chance to get good at it is by practicing, right? And so, if something isn't working for you, it sort of doesn't matter whether it will or won't work for you in the future. Your best chance is to keep trying. And what we've found so far is overwhelming evidence that if you keep trying, you will almost certainly succeed. You know what I mean? It's like, if you keep trying in different ways and you keep trying new things and you keep working at it day after day after day, eventually you will find a breakthrough.
One of the things that... Sorry, go ahead. I didn't realize you weren't...
Oh, no, I'm finished. Eventually you'll find a breakthrough.
Okay. Well, one of the arguments that whenever I have this discussion with people, they're like, well, what if you have a mental disability or something that prevents you from learning? And it's like, when you're talking about this sort of skill learning, and I know that Anderson doesn't really say it himself, but like, realistically speaking, the only people he's going to be trying to do this with are people who are mentally, normal. I don't want to say normal because that's kind of fucked up, but like, like the people who have the cognitive abilities there are sort of like the neurotypical type people.
Sure.
So it's like saying that, like, well, cats can't walk because I saw this cat didn't have front legs, so obviously cats can't walk.
Sure.
Right? Or it's like saying, oh, how come if a cat practices hard enough, a cat with 2 legs will be able to walk on its feet like it's 4 legs. Right? So it's like, the thing I was trying to say is that, like, a lot of people will take what he says too literally and be like, oh, well, obviously there are people who can't learn this because my cousin, whatever, technically she's my aunt, but she's, got some mental impairments and had fetal alcohol syndrome, and so she struggles with a lot of basic skills. She's eventually learned how to do a lot of that stuff and is holding a job, which is really great. But like, I don't ever see her playing chess at a high level or something like that, right? And it's like, yeah, there are going to be people who maybe can't learn those things, but there's an audience to be spoken to.
Yeah, this is a book addressed to the vast majority, not to the.
Exactly.
If you do not have a doctor telling you that something is wrong with you, then probably you can learn to do just about anything you feel like. And heck, even if you do have a doctor telling you there's something wrong with you, it's probably not as doomed as you think it is, right? The body is a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah.
And that isn't and even as I say that, right, I'm like, that isn't a very strong argument, right? I'm arguing more on my gut instinct on this than I am on actual knowledge and facts, right? This is my impression, but I don't actually have evidence to back it up, right? And like, this whole chapter felt a lot less scientific than the rest of the book did. I felt like, right? He's giving all of these anecdotes. He's making this kind of shaky argument, and it's like, right? Because I don't think that there really is I don't think that there is a strong argument that can be made that anyone can achieve whatever they want, right? And it's like you look at how he very carefully kind of places the pitfalls in learning and mastery with throughout the book, and doesn't spend a huge amount of time on any of it. You know what I mean? It's like, I think if you like added up the number of paragraphs in the book that talked about like, okay, if you get a little older, your body changes. Okay, if you don't start young, then this is some stuff that maybe can't do, right? He probably spends 10 paragraphs on that stuff, and the entire rest of the book on, assuming that everything is fine. Here's how you do learning the best, right? So I don't know. I was kind of hoping for more.
Yeah, it was definitely a very uninspired ending. It was kind of like it's one of those things where it's one of those research books where it's like, here's all the stuff, but I'm not gonna make a conclusion. You make the conclusion. So they have to come up with some like really sort of that's actually just kind of irrelevant closing chapter.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's like, again, I think it comes back to kind of my practical argument, right? It's like, you will never know with any kind of certainty whether you can or can't accomplish something, right? And that's just kind of like a fact of life that you're going to have to learn to live with. You know what I mean? It's like life is uncertain, right? You're never going to get the kind of guarantee that you'd be happy about, right? It's always a game of incomplete information, right? As a human being, right? We don't know what we don't know, right? But, I think the thing that the book does really well is saying things to the effect of like, with all of the research and science that we've done so far, if you want to do something, this method is going to be your best shot, right? It's not a guarantee, but it's like, this is what we've got right now, right? So use this. And I think that when you think about it that way instead, and you stop looking for a guarantee and you just start saying, okay, I'm gonna, kind of lose yourself away from the destination and more towards the journey. Be like, it is a thing that I want to do to pursue becoming good at this, right? As opposed to I want to be good at this, right?
Right. So the way I about this chapter in particular, just the way, like this
cutting out a little bit.
Like, no, I cut out. Sorry. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's a matter of what you want to believe in, right? Because we can't prove it either way. Like, we can't check everybody that's living. Everybody can learn as much, but there's you can choose to have the belief that everybody can learn and that you can learn anything you set your mind to and that your body allows you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you it's kind of like you decide to live your way like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the premise of your life, and you could just go ahead with that.
Yeah, you just kind of have to take a leap of faith on this, right? Like you have to make an assumption that this is a reasonable thing to do, right? And when you look at the mountain of evidence that says, like, hey, millions and millions of people have done this and it's worked for them, right? Like, you can be pretty darn confident. It's not a guarantee, but you are pretty darn confident that it is possible. And
I think one thing that taken away from this book is kind of like the importance of, I keep talking about it, but the importance of present moment awareness and sort of like, you can't ever know whether you'll be an expert or something, but you'll know that what you're doing right now will lead to a better future, right? At least in some way. Where it's like, if I deliberately practice now, I don't know how much better I'll be in a year, but I have faith that I'll be better.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to, be worried, I think, about whether or not you will be better just because you're practicing harder or whatever, but like, making sure that you understand that there is no end point, at least insofar as I have to be whatever by whatever.
Yeah. I have to be diamond by the end of the season. Sorry, something. Sorry, something got caught in my throat there. No, I you know,
It sounds
I
like,
aim
sounds
it at,
like
I
you need to
aim
get
it at
that
you.
checked out, dude.
I aim it at you, but I also aim it at like literally
Yeah,
every other League of
completely.
Legends player in the universe, right?
I'm absolutely super targeted by that. Just replace Diamond by Master.
Yeah, right. You know, it's like League of Legends is still going to be here next season. You know, like
The only argument you can make is that is for pro play and age and stuff. But like if you're
Sure.
like, but in the end, it's like pro play is one of the ways you can pursue mastery, right?
Mhm.
Not the only one.
Yeah.
That's
Precisely.
how I soothe myself when I think of
Mhm.
this.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make, actually.
I think I
Yeah,
missed
I
some of
really
it. I'm
want-
sorry.
I'm saying that I'm also attacked by the I need to get master before the end of the season because I want to make it to pro to pursue mastery. But I've also come to realize that it's not the only way to pursue mastery, and there will be new ways to pursue mastery that will come up as well as the ecosystem develops around
And
it. So,
also, like, things
chilling.
develop in their own time, right?
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
it's like if you get really mad at yourself for not making a certain goal, then you kind of, at least in my experience, sort of get to a point where you're like kneecapping yourself because you're so angry at yourself for not making it to where you wanted to be that you stop learning.
Yeah, you become
Exactly.
emotionally compromised, and then higher brain function turns off, and then booga booga. Yeah. So, another thing that he kind of talks about, kind of the end of the chapter, is quick learners, right? And the kind of core idea here is that like there is always going to be like a range in how quickly like a beginner picks stuff up, right?
Mhm.
Generally, however, those differences tend to kind of even out over time and regress towards the mean, right? Like people who start out slow tend to speed up, and those who start fast tend to slow down. I think that's actually more of like a you actually see that a little bit more in Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman. But the book here talks about a 2006 study of chess students, right? 57 students between the ages of 9 and 13, averaging about 4 years of experience playing chess. And the questions that they kind of asked is, like how are different factors going to affect continued growth and development as chess players, right? And the two things in particular that they measured were amount of practice, and they caveat this by saying, they didn't distinguish between time just spent playing the game and time actually doing good deliberate practice on your own.
Yeah.
But amount of practice and IQ, right? And I got a giant, enormous, fat block of a quote here. I'm just going to go straight through, which covers several different paragraphs. Goes basically like this. When children are just beginning to learn chess, their intelligence, that is, their performance on IQ tests in particular, plays a role in how quickly they can learn the game and reach a certain minimal level of competence. Kids with higher IQ scores generally find it easier to learn and to remember rules and develop and carry out strategies. All of these things give them an advantage in the early stages of learning the game when one plays by abstract thinking applied directly to the pieces on the board. But we know that as children or adults, study and learn the game, they develop sets of mental representations, in essence, mental shortcuts, that give them both a superior memory for the sorts of chess positions found in a game and an ability to quickly zero in on the appropriate moves for a given situation. With enough solitary practice, the mental representations become so useful and powerful in playing the game that the major thing separating two players is not their intelligence, or their visual spatial abilities, or even their memory or processing speeds. Instead, the quality and quantity of their mental representations and how effectively they use them. Thus, by the time one becomes a grandmaster or even an accomplished 12-year-old tournament player, the abilities measured by IQ tests are far less important than the mental representations that one has developed through practice.
There's actually like a slight inverse, like higher IQ people tend to not reach higher stuff as well.
Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
recall correctly.
Yeah, it turns out that like actually the average IQ of grandmasters would be a little bit lower than you'd expect it to be.
Yeah, I think what they did, I believe, is it said the within the group of elite chess players, the ones that were better,
Higher IQ were not the better.
yeah, the ones that were better tended to be a little bit lower IQ, and the ones that tended to be worse tended to be a little bit higher IQ.
But like I'm pretty sure like this is like skewed by anecdotal evidence, like not backed by like actual statistical analysis
Yeah.
on large groups. Like I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it's just an artifact and
Yeah.
not an actual thing.
Could be. They propose a potential reasoning behind it. That being that, if you succeed early on giving a certain amount of effort, then you start to believe that that is the amount of effort required to succeed, right? And so the people with the higher IQ have an easier time,
I feel
end up
personally
developing
attacked.
fewer practice regimens, and they don't actually they don't develop the habits that they need to continue to
Yep.
succeed long term, right? Whereas the lower IQ students who do struggle a little bit more in the beginning get used to needing to work a little bit harder to keep up, and because they get used to that amount of work, as they continue to learn and to grow, they tend to be harder workers. And
I feel so
that-
personally attacked by that on the full topic.
right? God, so no kidding, right? So basically the thing that you find is that when you look at the best of the best,
That's really interesting.
you don't
Yeah.
get the brightest, you get the hardest workers.
And that strikes me as funny because if you've ever read Carol Dweck's work about the growth and fixed mindset, they're like the studies show that like, hey, if you tell a kid they're smart, once they come into a roadblock, they'll hit
They won't understand.
they'll hit a level of cognitive dissonance and just give up. Whereas if you tell like, hey, you're hardworking, they'll be like, hey, I'm hardworking anyway. I'll figure this shit out.
Yeah, precisely. It's important stuff.
It is.
So, and the little note that I made is that it's like, talent in the form of IQ seems to really probably only help at like the white belt stage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
You get complimented when you start, and it
Yeah.
makes you feel good, so you keep playing. It gives you one more reason to keep playing.
well, I mean, sure, but I mean, even just like, it helps you progress through the white belt stage faster, right? Like, that's
yeah,
basically
right.
what they're
Yeah,
saying, right? Easier time to learn and
Yeah,
remember the
I mean,
rules, develop
yeah.
your strategies. It's like, all of that is like, your very first kind of development of understanding of the fundamentals there.
Which would kind of explain why certain people maybe get diamond in their first year, like diamond 5, and then they're just like they can't get any further than that without starting to really
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
dig into the game.
Yeah, because it takes so much to break through the barrier.
Yeah.
That you just like it's not about it's about the training regimen and like dedication, not.
You
anything
look
else.
at like you look at like IQ, right? And that's going to determine how it's going to determine basically like where you get without deliberate practice, and it's also going to determine how quickly you get there, basically. But then once you get to the point where you're starting to hit more blue belt and purple belt sort of stuff, right? You're going to hard flatline if you don't start actually deliberately practicing stuff. So,
Something. I've been diamond for 5 seasons in a row.
yikes. Now I'm feeling personally attacked. Jesus.
Yeah, no, that's me. That's
I mean,
both
at least
of us,
you guys
dude.
got the diamond at some point in your lives.
what's
Yeah.
worse. Like, is it just better to have gotten to diamond
My
than
friend,
just fucking stay there?
I have
Like,
not climbed a division in 6 years. Come back and
Yeah, but
talk to
you're-
me and you tell me how that feels.
oh, well.
I can already tell you how that feels because that's basically where I was before I got here. But still,
Yeah, and now you've climbed higher. It's interesting. Anyway, the final kind of thought of the book is that it seems like the only real genetic advantages in terms of learning are maybe the ones that make it a little bit more pleasurable to practice or easier to keep going or similar sorts of things, right? It's like your affinity for the practice process as opposed to any kind of skill-related stuff. You know what I mean? And this seems somewhat true to me. I don't know, or it's. I'll take games as an example, right? you look at Skara, right? Professional League of Legends player, right? And then, turns streamer, goes to TFT, hits Challenger there too, right? Is that a result of that he just happened to be good at both games? No, that's not, right? It's that he knows how to learn. And even if maybe a good portion of the stuff is unconscious, when you look at what he does when he's experimenting with stuff, it really does look a lot like deliberate practice. He's like, I'm just gonna go chain Vestus Hearts this entire day. I'm just gonna do that. It's terrible, but I'm gonna do it, right? And see what I can figure out about him, And he's not afraid to lose to learn something. And really he's not. Like, it's genuinely doesn't bother him at all, right? And so you look at him doing the sorts of stuff that he does, it makes perfect sense how he is able to be good in basically any kind of a game that he wants to be. He knows how to learn.
But on top of that too, he in that one podcast he talked about how hard it can be to do kind of things like that because people relentlessly flame him for making the wrong decision, even if it's a decision that had literally no hindsight to it whatsoever. Where it's like, oh, there was no way I could have told that I needed to pivot on stage 5-6 to a completely different comp, and then some silver TFT guys would be like, "Ha, Skara, you fucking suck at TFT." And it's like, how do you keep your morale up, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like
purposely practicing makes you look like an idiot.
Right, exactly.
Two people with fixed mindset.
Two people that don't understand how purposeful practice works. Okay, so by the way, while we were talking, I was playing a ranked on a Smurf account, and we won a 4v5. It's high gold elo. My Yasuo is 0-15-0 because he got solo killed once and said GG and ran it down. And right now it's 27 minutes in, and we're taking. Because I kept saying, guys, winnable 4v5, we've got this. And my team followed through.
Very interesting. Only in gold do you find that kind of optimism.
And my Irida said, Rengar, you have insane mental. I'm like, nah, you're just chill. You played well. I called where we were moving and you followed. That's cool. You're cool, dudes.
How pissed was Yasuo that he won?
And Yasuo has fucking won a game where he's 0-15. He's gonna get fucking times 9. Oh, the threshold is 14 deaths, so he's getting banned, right?
Is it 14 deaths?
Yeah, you get.
Because I died 15 times yesterday and didn't get punished.
No, you get flagged. You get flagged. You don't get instantly banned.
Oh.
It's one of the triggers.
I wasn't inting. I was just tilted. So.
Yeah, no.
60.
Well, Yasuo could say the same thing. Oh no, he was inting. Never mind. Yep.
Well, it's been kind of a long journey. We got through 8 whole chapters. How's that?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of fit my prediction that the early chapters would be really hard to get through, will take forever, and then after that it's just 10 minutes, the 45 minutes for a chapter, and super easy. So.
Yep. So, are we thinking probably Josh Waitzkin next? That's kind of what we had said the last time.
Because Douglas Brackman actually mentions his book by name, so good for me to give a rereading and then think deeply into what it means. So.
Into it. Alrighty. Any particular takeaways this week? I don't know. I felt like.
My particular takeaway is that I'm bad and I should feel bad.
Yikes.
Gotcha. Understandable. Have a nice day.
But realistically, it's kind of sort of the way I was raised, the way teachers talked to me growing up. I don't think I ever realized how much of a fixed mindset I do actually have, even though I try not to, I try really hard not to have a fixed mindset, but it's such an ingrained habit that it's hard for me not to feel okay with just going into a game and running it down with a shitty build just to see how it works.
Yeah. It is really tough. And, I mean, this This is why they say, right? Like, not you can only learn some stuff early, but like a lot of the like early childhood stuff, it really sticks, So like it is tough, right? I would say the thing that I would say to you in that circumstance is like, remember to be gentle with yourself, right?
Right.
Even in your expectations of developing a growth mindset, you need to have a growth mindset. Right?
Fucking 12 head right there.
That's fucking like 16 head right there, dude.
Yeah.
4 head
Right?
squared.
Like, it's okay. Like the things that you were said growing up affected you, and those are things that are going to be, like your expectation should be that is going to be a mindset that is going to become sort of difficult to develop. It's not that you can't do it. You absolutely can do it. It's just that it is going to take effort over a sustained period.
Right, and it's like, I mean, I have growth mindset in certain areas of my life, like with, say, music
sure.
composition, or, even at work now, I sort of have more of a growth mindset where I'm like, today I'm just going to try this new thing. If I don't make my money, that's fine. I'll just get it tomorrow. Whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then when it comes to League, it's like, yeah, it's just harder. I think. I'm not really sure why.
I will tell you exactly why, and it's the same thing that I've been saying every week. There is no division between performance and practice in League of Legends. There is only rank. Yeah. That is all that anyone plays. If you want to feel okay running it down, I highly suggest that you find a way to do it in Flex Queue or in normals, where you do not feel the pressure of, I'm in a ranked game, I need to perform, right? Because if you feel the pressure to perform, you will consciously and subconsciously try to perform. And you will not be comfortable experimenting. Because there is this fear of failure, there's the fear of losing LP. There are stakes. If you want practice to be effective, there cannot be stakes. You have to be free to experiment.
Yeah, they can't be stakes, they have to be flanks instead.
Precisely.
Exactly. They have to be loins.
That's what I'm saying, dude.
Yeah.
So.
Also.
I just have to get rid of the steaks and put pork loins in instead.
Agreed.
So, Tiberius, Aldrake, and I started got each one a level 30 account and started ranking on it together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he kept playing on it, so I have to finish my play. And it's funny because so far I'm 8-1. First elo of the first game was gold 4, and the elo of the last game I played was gold 3, despite me winning 8 games.
Interesting.
So I'm confused. And I don't know.
Were you on different roles?
No, we were playing jungle and mid each of us. Like we haven't moved our roles. We haven't even changed champions. The thing is, maybe I don't understand how the MMR works. Like maybe it's not. It's supposed to be like I in my mind it's supposed to like my MMR is supposed to skyrocket at the same time I'm hard winning.
I'd imagine that it does after you get out of placement. That probably the MMR doesn't move very fast in placement, so that your rank can sort of catch up to your MMR or something. But even though that doesn't make any sense because they start you at Iron 4 anyway, so like I don't freaking know.
No, you don't really start Iron 4. You start Bronze 1, 2.
Oh, do you? You're supposed to start Iron 4 when they introduced the season, but they might have changed it.
Yeah, you start Bronze 2 with high silver for some reason. Oh, by the way, buying like a level 30 account is
it seems like we're pretty much finished with
talking
about the book. So
we are, sorry.
And they're great.